On today's show, it is a special affair. It is a crossover affair, and it's against the Rays, Mr. Ulises Sambrano. And guess what? We're actually the happy ones. This doesn't make any sense. We're going to be talking about the whole series, recapping it, Tatis's insane throw, just the kind of chaotic vibes of the whole series. Some good starts from Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, and me still being terrified of Randy Arozarena at every single opportunity whatsoever. You know what you're listening to, guys. Locked On Padres and Locked On Rays. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Rays podcast for Monday, June 19th. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. As always, I am your host with sometimes, well, not as always if you're a Rays listener, but I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, that's JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres for only Padres content. You can check that out. Also, go check out the YouTubes. Just type in Locked On Padres and Locked On Rays. And finally, I've been talking enough. I know it's only been a minute 30, but in my opinion, I have to bring on a good buddy of mine, Mr. Ulises Sambrano, host, or I should say co-host of Locked On Rays. He is here. But before we get into this series, man, I got to ask you, just how are you? How are you these days?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the invite for this crossover. We had been planning it for over a week, so it's nice to finally do this thing. We haven't done it in a while, so I'm just glad that you cleared a path and you did not block any obstacles for us to do that. And you know, I'm glad that that's the way that it is.
It's good vibes, man. And I was, because at first we were planning on doing one before the series, and we unfortunately weren't able to do that. But I for one am thrilled because I get to talk to you following this weekend series that this sounds like the ultimate like content creator thing to say, but a lot really did happen this weekend series. Like it was a really chaotic is the best way to describe, I think, this series between the Rays and Padres that, you know, ends up going the Padres' way. They win 2 of 3, but there's just a whole lot. There's so many storylines here. And I think what we got to do is we got to start with yesterday's game first. Because I think that's what everyone wants to talk about mostly, even though on the right or left, whatever direction, I put Blake Snell's revenge game first on the itinerary. Ignore that.
Yes.
Ignore that for a second, folks. What we got to talk about is yesterday's game in which the Padres won 5-4. It was a ridiculous game in a lot of ways. And I think that it's funny because the matchup, heading into it with a casual baseball fan, they'd say Musgrove versus Chirinos should probably be in the Padres' favor. Well, to that, I say you have to look up stuff because the Rays are the masters of black magic and guys you have never heard of. I mean, Ulises, I know people who like know prospects and they'll just text me and be like, there's this guy on the Rays who throws 102 now. And I have no idea. I've never heard of him in my life. And so as a result, I say all this to say, I think matchups and just anything on paper is it's just kind of hard to analyze the Tampa Bay Rays that way. I just think that they're a team that it's very next man up. It's very find a way. It's very, we will make you better, which I applaud and I think should be applauded by a lot of people. But in the end, the Padres end up getting the better end of things. Snell, or I'm sorry, not Blake Snell. Joe Musgrove in this game, 6 innings, only gives up 2 earned runs on 6 hits. Got into a lot of trouble. Rays were hitting him a little bit, not too hard, but got out of trouble and whatnot. Only 1 strikeout, which is pretty wild.
Yes.
Like really, really wild. It shows you a little bit of the plate discipline of the Rays. But most importantly, and as Padres fans want me to gloat, and I was tempted to before, there was a lot of ridiculousness in this series. And the big things that happened in Sunday's game is a onslaught of runs thanks to Fernando Tatis Jr. stealing second base, which then allows multiple other runners to score. It was really ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, they did get some RBIs with Manny Machado and Rougned Odor, but it was still like it started with the madness of fielder's choice things and Tatis stealing second. And I'm hearing Blake Snell on the broadcast lose his mind and say, save! safe as he slides into second. Really a lot of great stuff, but
Yeah.
I've been talking for a while. Ulysses, what was kind of your impression, I think, of Sunday's game and just the Rays as a whole? Is there anything you can tell us about?
Yeah, I mean, Sunday is, like you said, was a chaotic. It was a chaotic series, but I think Sunday was a chaotic game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it bodes well for your Joker impersonation that this was just complete anarchy of a weekend. But I do agree with you. Musgrove only getting one strikeout is a little bit of a shock, but the guys were able to put some contact, maybe not at the right time, maybe not at the right places. Machado had a couple of good plays there that he was just in the right situation at the right time. That happens. I think Yonny Chirinos did well. I mean, he is what I think to be the best number 5 starter in all of baseball. Like, the guy has a sub-3 ERA, and where do you find that in other teams where you can do that with your 5 starter? So unfortunately, his defense kind of let him down yesterday. But again, he kept the game close enough, and the bullpen did as well, that they were able to at least make it interesting and make it a 1-run game. But you're right. I think the highlight of yesterday was that Tatis throw. I mean, it's simple as that. It was just an unreal throw, great accuracy. As I alluded to earlier, obviously, as a Rays fan, you didn't like the fact that his left foot, Nola's foot, kind of did look cemented there from the get-go and was never moved. So, the clearing a path and all that, obviously it's going to 98% of Padres fans are going to be like, no, that's legal. Boom. Maybe 2% are be like, well, I don't know. And then it's the same opposite thing for the Rays. Like 98% of Rays fans are going to be like, he totally obstructed the plate. And 2% are going to be like, nah, so that's fandom. That's completely okay. Like, I was in the first inning when Tatis got caught at third base by Patrick Court. I think so, right? I was about to tweet out, I don't like how fielders now are putting their feet in front of the bag. And so, like, you don't really get, as a runner, you're having another obstacle to go. I think that's not fair. That's kind of Bush League. And I was going to tweet out, like, it helped us this time, but I really would rather not see that. And then 7 innings later, another foot by another team got in the way. But no, it was an interesting series, man. I think coming into it, especially after the first victory on Friday, you were like, okay, well, yeah, this is the Padres team that is reeling, and that's, not playing to expectations. So we might be able to actually win this series. But the Padres came out and did their thing, not only pitching wise on Saturday, but on Sunday, they did it on all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, if not for the Tatis play, Wander Franco makes that great snag to rob Manny Machado potentially of a single. Like Wander Franco, great defensive player, kind of seems like he's having his coming out party this year. Finally, not finally. He's still super young and has barely been up all that long in the grand scheme of things. But, Tatis throw, it's just, I mean, I've been talking about this for a while, that, like, just because you're athletic and you have the arm strength and the speed does not mean that you're always just going to translate to the outfield, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about what will make a good fielder. It's always the scrawny guy who can move fast. There's a lot of different things: reaction time, the routes you take, obviously strength and speed too. But so Tatis, it wasn't like this given thing that he'd be a great defensive player. In fact, the last time we saw him on defense was primarily shortstop, where he was shaky, to say the least. Made a lot of errors. I don't think as bad as some other people made it out to be, but still definitely not good. I think defensively at shortstop. And then this year, I mean, if you just look at a bunch amongst outfielders currently, defensive runs saved, he's like first in Major League Baseball among outfielders in that category. And then outs above average, he's also up there. He's actually tied for the second place spot with Jake Myers and Julio Rodriguez. He's been phenomenal. And the defensive run save stuff comes from these plays he's made, especially with these outfield assists. I was yelling in my room saying, stop testing this man. That's what you deserve. And it's crazy because that ends up saving the game. To the point about Nola, catcher's interference or not interference is becoming my new, like, for all my football fans out there, was it a catch or not a catch? I have no idea anymore. That is my perspective on rules. I've given up. So usually
let it go.
Like,
hey, you
make it goes our way.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, it sounds like, he might have blocked the plate a little bit. But I'm happy it went our way. If it didn't, I wouldn't blame the entire game on it. Not unlike last week for those who watched my show when they did call the rain delay for some reason. Then our poor Tom Cosgrove rookie is pitching in a monsoon. But other than that, I just thought, I get it. I really do. And I think that it's becoming this thing in baseball that I don't always quite get when it will be called, won't be called. It's weird considering the replay and all the things that we have now and new rules that there still seems to be these errors. But regardless, it is still unbelievable that it was a play in the first place. And it ends up being the game clincher, the game sealer. I was worried in the ninth. Guys made some good contact from the Rays. You saw one that just went foul. I think it was from, was it Yandy Diaz or no? I think it was Franco hits one that
Franco, and then it was
goes foul.
Rayleigh. That it seemed like, oh, it's good, but it was center field completely.
And then Randy comes up, and I'm like, oh my god, not this guy. Anybody but Randy Arozarena, the most terrifying.
He loved the spotlight, and you saw that.
Yeah, he loves it.
So I'm like, oh man, this is exactly, baby, exactly. But no,
unbelievable.
He did get from what I could see, I think Padres fans were really cool with him. I think there's obviously some love from Padres fans that are Mexican or have Mexican heritage and were obviously fans of his during the WBC. So I think that he did get some love in left field from Padres fans, which is cool to see. That's exactly why this whole schedule change of every team playing every other team, like it's very cool for the Padres fans to now have some access to Randy Arozarena. And likewise, otherwise, in another year when Rays fans get to see, Tatis and Soto and the like.
Yeah, and he goes deep in this series as well. And we're going to talk about that in a second, guys. But first, I need to talk to you about something extra special, guys. Look, the Rays know this especially. For a championship team, it's all about finding all the right parts. It's not just necessarily, it's a big part, not just bringing in the superstars and the blockbusters. Sometimes you just got to make sure every player is the right fit. You got to make them better at what they are. Well, that is somewhat the same thing, as building the perfect transportation vehicle. If you can't tell already, I don't really know a lot about cars, but that's good in this case because eBay Motors helps you out when it comes to your vehicle. They have this kind of option over there with eBay Guaranteed Fit that shows you the parts that you're selecting. You put them in the garage, and then you see whether or not it fits your vehicle. There's like a check mark thing. It's sick. It's awesome because people like me, I don't really get it, and it's really helpful to know. Well, guess what? You don't have to worry about that piece not fitting or whatever. And if it doesn't for some reason not fit, which it is going to fit, don't worry. That green check mark, man, let me tell you, it's a lot more verifiable than the current one we have on Twitter, let me tell you. But with this one, if it doesn't, you get your money back too, guys. So what are you waiting for? Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be in the game in no time. So go check it out, guys. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Go check it out, ebaymotors.com, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. But go check it out, ebaymotors.com.
Man. Can we go to Friday's game? So
absolutely.
The next segment?
Transition. Let's talk about Friday's game, everybody. The game that did, I believe, hold on 1 second. Am I imagining things? That did go the Rays' way, very much the Rays' way in this game. And it puts Padres Twitter into a tailspin. Biggest reason being the Padres had they elected to use Ryan Weathers in the last game of the Cleveland Guardians series in order to have Yu Darvish, somewhat understandably, ready for the Rays matchup. Didn't go his way. Yu Darvish now 4.74 ERA on the season, 5 innings, gets hit for 6 earned runs on 8 hits, 1 walk and 5 Ks. While for Tampa Bay's side, potential Cy Young winner Shane McClanahan coming out and put in I can't think of a pun on his name, but 6 2/3, only 1 earned run on 3 hits. He did walk 3, but didn't matter. Look, part of me is just going to do the whole Padres with runners in scoring position, right? They struggle with that. But I really thought that this was just overall just a shutdown game from Shane McClanahan and was a little bit of a reminder of when the Rays are at their best. They are next to Texas, probably the two of them. It seems like the best teams in Major League Baseball right now, if you want to look at run differential and the overall dominance that these two teams have had. I mean, it's a friendly reminder for people. Like, that's why I think this series meant so much for Padres fans, is because the Rays, batting average, they're 4th. On base percentage, they're 3rd. Runs score, they're second. Home runs, they're second. Slugging percentage, they're second. ERA, they're second. Batting average against, this is for pitchers, first. And then whip, they're third. They are top 5 in literally every category that matters. Pretty much. I don't know the defensive stats for the Rays, but I imagine Ulises could attest to that more. But, you saw why those categories played out in Friday's game, I think. And it went super well for them. And as I mentioned before, get a home run, Mr. Big Game Randy, 4 RBIs on the night. But Ulises, what else were your kind of takeaways from this one?
Well, Friday night's game has usually been the type of wins you see in 2023 by the Rays. Like everything just works. The pitching did, the bullpen did its job. The bullpen did kind of look a little bit shaky, not gonna lie. Armstrong there got into a little bit of trouble that you had to call in Crazy Eyes, Pete Fairbanks. But he got it done. And Randy, again, loves the spotlight, had a tremendous game that Friday evening. But I do want to focus on Shane McClanahan here because for I don't know. I think we've had the Locked On Rays has been going on since June 2019. So now it's going on 4 years now. We have this conversation, Kevin and I, where how many aces are there? Not top of the rotation arms. How many aces are there in baseball? My theory is that you can just do the same math as a deck of cards. So you can't just have 20 aces. Like that's just impossible. There's around maybe 7, 10 aces really with all of the starting pitchers. So my thing with an ace is not only do they have to be currently doing things, but they have to be doing it for a long time. That's what's an ace. Like you can't just be a 1-year guy and be like, oh, this guy's an ace. Like I can't do that when there's guys like Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, Verlander, that have been doing it, Kershaw, like they've been doing it for a long time. So the whole thing is that Rays fans, and this is where maybe I depart from Rays fans, most Rays fans, is that Shane McClanahan is pitching like an ace. He is doing that. But the problem with me, it's like, what if you find a really talented person who is going to be the greatest president this country has ever seen, and they are just so smart and they are so well public speaking, but they're 34 years old. I'm sorry, they need 1 more year. They just don't have the longevity. So that's where I am with Shane McClanahan. Like, I need 1 more full season before calling him an ace, but I wanted your perspective, a third-party perspective, saying when you look at aces around around MLB, how many are aces in your head, and does Shane McClanahan make that list?
One interesting thing about that, and I do like your point that there's just like, there's a difference almost between ace of your team versus like an ace, where it's like that guy goes out and baseball fans might just be like, hey, I'm going to go watch the Rays tonight because this guy McClanahan is pitching. Right. I'm going to go watch because Garrett Cole is pitching. I'm going to go watch. It's actually funny that the ERA leaders this year are like, with the exception of McClanahan and maybe Framber Valdez and Garrett Cole and then Luis Castillo. So it's not that bad. I was going to go on that point there, but there's a lot of weird ones. You got Sonny Gray up there, Nate Eovaldi, Marcus Stroman, Puerto Rican Power, Justin Steele, Michael Wacha of the Padres is 10th in ERA, which is wild. Yeah. There's some weird ones this year. I will say with McClanahan, just slightly, and we're talking about like McClanahan ace standards. Ground ball rate is a little bit lower. His FIP is decently higher than his ERA, 3.67 FIP. Yep. So it's possible some great Rays defenses covering up for a couple starts that might have been them not delivering as much as usual, but also who cares? Because McClanahan has been good before, last year specifically, being kind of the big one. I'm not sure where he finished in Cy Young voting last year.
I think 5th, if I'm not
5th. I'm gonna check maybe, really quickly.
Yeah, check on me. But yeah, he was the All-Star game starter. 6th. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right, but still, it's still unbelievable. He's a very good pitcher. Has been for an extended period of time. Like, McClanahan is one of those guys, though. I really think that you have to start putting him up there. I mean, he's probably the front runner for the Cy Young at this point. It does help that he's on a really great Rays team. I know that shouldn't matter, but I think it does sometimes to at least get his name a little bit more out there, pitching for the best or one of the best teams in baseball. I think he's been great, but I agree with you. I think there's only a few that maybe you can call these superstar aces. But then again, it can be almost like year to year. Some years it might be last year, Kevin Gausman was the guy. And this year he's still very good, but not as good as last year. Maybe next year McClanahan won't be the guy. And then it'll be whoever you guys find who's working at the local 7-Eleven somehow, right? It'll probably be Tyler Glasnow, who's very good, who we didn't get to see in this series. But, I think that McClanahan, while Padres fans were frustrated, and I have been occasionally making excuses for the lineup, even still, you get a solo shot from Nelson Cruz, you get a double from Xander Bogaerts. Those are the bright side, especially with Bogaerts, because he's had this wrist issue all year. He was awful, absolutely awful in the month of May, and it was probably attributed to when he got hit by a pitch on the wrist. He's been playing a lot better lately. He's slashing pretty well. So it's just nice overall, even if it doesn't amount to a win, to see Xander Bogaerts at least being kind of competent at the plate, because for a while now, it feels like the only thing that he's had going is his glove. In 12 games in June, 302, 388, 419 slash line. Not God tier amazing, but it's kind of what you expect from Xander Bogaerts. He's going to rip doubles. He's going to take good swings, get on base. Love that. And against this Rays team, I'll take whatever, man. But yeah, I think McClanahan.
And he's seen McClanahan before. He's been used to it from Boston, so that should bode well for him in that matchup for sure. But no, I think that Friday night game gave us hope. But the Rays have been doing this thing where they when they lose series, which is not that many, they usually win the first game and then they drop the other two. It happened against the Baltimore Orioles. It happened against the Houston Astros. It happened against the New York Mets. And I believe against the Chicago Cubs, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's unfortunate, but again, you can't really say, oh, well, why did the Rays have the best record? And I know fandom makes you think, oh, why did they lose? But like, you went to a West Coast trip. A West Coast trip is always a nightmare. And especially when you've been playing like 28 of their last 30 games, 28 games in like 30 days, something like that. There are 16 games in the last 17 days, like insane, right? So you go to Oakland, you split there, you have the reverse boycott game, you go to San Diego. It's a tough series. It's chaotic. You get out of there with a 3-4 record. I think everybody should be okay with that.
Yeah. Pretty solid stuff overall. Let me just take a quick sip of water.
Of course. And then take me to Saturday. That madness.
Mm-hmm.
The Joker's back.
Oh, man. Let's talk about Saturday's game, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why we're saving this for last is because of Blake Snell. Blake Snell, who I talked about on my show a lot, and everybody talks about this. This is a unique opinion. He starts slow. You know what I mean? He's been in his Padres tenure, and I don't know how it was for the Rays necessarily, but in his Padres tenure, this man looks like John Lester when he was 52 years old or whatever. And then when it's like it's like a month and a half into the season, he looks like John Lester when he was 30 years old. Blake Snell has once again done that. He's been doing this every year with the Padres. He did it last year, and he becomes one of the elite strikeout pitchers in baseball. And this was no different. 6 innings, doesn't give up a run, only 2 hits. He walks 3. He can walk batters every now and then. He can be an inefficient pitcher, but who cares? 12 strikeouts, no earned runs, only 2 hits. That's what I'm looking at. 0.60 ERA over his last 5 starts. The Snellzilla is back. He does this every year. I was worried for a brief stretch. I talked about it on my pod because he usually likes going with a fastball slider combo. Then he did that a couple weeks ago, and it didn't work. So I was like, oh no, maybe the turn isn't going to happen. And instead it has. And he's been a guy that has mixed his repertoire up actually a little bit more than usual, which I think is very interesting and maybe fooled Rays hitters a decent amount, which is no easy task given their lineup. So really great start for Blake Snell. And it was a revenge game. You love revenge games, obviously.
Yes.
The infamous World Series situation that I imagine you get asked about more than I get asked about my hat. You know what I mean? But he comes out and shoves. And look at it. He's already got a headache.
National media just cannot. It's like, oh, they just love to mention Game 6, 5 1/3. Look, as a Rays fan, if you want to have mental health and mental sanity, you just got to put that behind you. You got to put it behind you, whatever. We all feel different ways about it. I think most Rays fans still think, look, it was the right thing to do. It was the wrong thing to go to Anderson, who was completely gassed. That's how I think most of the fandom feels. Obviously, some feel like, hey, why didn't you let him shove? Others say, no, Anderson was the right guy, whatever it is. But yeah, national media just cannot forget that. They just have to always bring it up. And of course, they were going to bring it up on Saturday. But look, Snell was awesome. He was awesome that day. 12 strikeouts, like you said. And dude, every guy in that lineup received a K. Every single one of them for the Rays. And Arozarena went 4 for 4, and not in the good 4 for 4. It was 4 strikeouts in 4 at bats. So Randy really had either the biggest target on his back from Snell, or Randy really just wanted to take Snell up top, whatever it is that you wanted. But no, it was a funky game too, though, because it's a pitcher's duel. Everything's kind of working itself out, and then the National League team does National League stuff and says, you know what? Let's bunt. And they bunt not once, not 2 times, but 3 times the lady. It was very odd. I'm not going to sound like a boomer, but I'm going to sound like, in all the years I've been watching baseball, I've never seen 3 bunts in a row. I've never seen 3 bunts in a row. I don't know about you, Javi, but I've never seen 3 bunts in a row, and it worked.
It was wild. It was absolutely wild. And it's funny because the bunt attempts, I mean, Tatis, they decided to basically just go small ball in this game because they weren't able to really hit Zach Eflin, which, again, another name that people are like, Zach Eflin, what? I thought he was bad. Yeah, well, he's on the Tampa Bay Rays now, so he's good. That's just how it works, ladies and gentlemen. If you're thinking of him back from his Miami or not Miami days, was it Philly? I think he was on Philly before. Yeah. That's what happens. Not a terrible pitcher, though, don't get me wrong, but that's what the Rays do. As long as you're not awful and you're just a name value, they go get you. 4.04 ERA last year with Philadelphia, 3.26 this year. And that's after this start. That he kind of does okay. 2 walks, 5 Ks. He only gives up 2 earned runs. And they're off this small ball. You got Tatis bunting. And they get a sacrifice fly that ends up bringing a run in. And later on in the game, later on that inning, Manny Machado does get the single, like the one true hit of the game. But yeah, just a lot of chaos. I mean, the hardest hit balls of this game by the Padres were all not hits. The hardest hit ball of the night was by Manny Machado at 110.7 miles per hour. And it was a fielding error by Zach Eflin. So that's how he gets on base. You have a ground out from Jake Cronenworth that was next. Gary Sanchez has a ground out. Juan Soto has a sac fly. And Xander Bogaerts has a line out. That's right. The top 5 hardest hit balls of the day weren't even like hits. Which is wild in a lot of ways.
That's why it was anarchy. That was why it was chaos. I mean, not the whole series, but
introduce a little
anarchy. And here we go. No, it was crazy. It was a crazy game. Look, I think revenge games. I believe in that. I think a lot of people are just like looking at the sport lately just as numbers on a spreadsheet. And look, the more data that you have to make a decision, I'm all for it. That's really awesome. And it's really good to be expanding our knowledge about the game that we love. But ultimately, they're human beings. You're not playing Stratomatic. Like there is that willpower of the human to say, I'm going to shove. You traded me. I didn't like that. I'm going for you. Like that has that. If you don't believe in that, then you might have never been playing a sport before. Like there is something called adrenaline. There is something called, pride and willpower. And so I think that's what we saw on Saturday is just Blake having that extra punch of saying, I'm going to deliver today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Blake. I loved his viral WRC plus rant, not rant, but like comment on the broadcast when even I was like, I know what WRC plus is, but he's like, why plus? And I was like, it's a great question, man. To be honest, it's a great question. Blake also being on the call in Sunday's game, but yeah, the whole human beings thing. It's a classic topic, the analytics thing, and I think that national media and the mainstream biggest media outlets, I think, do a poor job at covering analytics sometimes. Not everybody, I got my favorites like Mina Kimes in the NFL, but in general, there can be some issues there. I think that where the nerds get out of control that I've noticed is when spin rates come up. What I mean by that is Joe Musgrove shoving in the playoffs. They're like, the only reason he might be pitching harder right now is because he's cheating. Not just that he's amped and this is the playoffs, but it's like, oh, so every now and then people sometimes like, you just got to watch, and we don't have to rehash the Snell thing from the World Series. But he is great in this game, and that was awesome. Padres offense overall, yes, they were able to score in this game. 2 earned runs. They score 5, obviously, on Sunday's game, but a lot of chaos in this one. If people are wondering, through the month of June so far, the Padres are 4th in not 4th, 6th in WRC plus among all major league teams, which is a big deal. They've been hitting well. Unfortunately, though, with runners in scoring position, their numbers aren't as good. WRC plus with runners in scoring position this month is 20th. So they've gotten a little bit better, and that's really all you need. For people wondering, I've said this a lot. If the Padres are going to make a comeback, it is based on just the top 4 guys. You just got to play okay. They don't even have to be that good, to be honest with you. They just have to play to their baseball card, really. And that's been, unfortunately, what they haven't been able to do. You might have seen in this Rays series, Gary Sanchez, who is like infamous for Yankees and, East Coast folks. Not the best, but for the Padres, he'd been raking. Unfortunately, last 7 games, he's like 1 for 20 with a 295 OPS, which isn't great, but
I will tell you a little quote that now we know, because obviously the Yankee and the Rays rivalry was very big. It's very big. It's very big. Blake Snell once said that Gary Sanchez can't block a beach ball. By the way, Gary Sanchez, he can't even block a beach ball. So we're really it's really funny for us that now they're teammates, and maybe he has to catch him one of these days. So that's something for you Padres fans to know and recognize and
I think he was catching him on Saturday's game too.
He was.
It's funny because Gary's makes a lot of has a lot of issues. He swings at dumb pitches. He's an above average offensive player among catchers. Among catchers, he can hit you like 20 home runs a season for sure. Yeah. And he's been great for the Padres so far. But the big thing has been his deficiencies defensively that haven't shown up too much. And you said he couldn't block a beach ball. In the starts, I remember it was against the Cubs. Gary Sanchez, the pitch framing, and you can go look this up, people, because there was a lot of pitches that he just stole. So I was like, is Gary Sanchez just randomly good
There's
at
something about not being in New
now?
York? There's something about not being in New York and not with the fandom that's just booing you whenever you don't have a hit that night. Like there's something about
ridiculous.
That. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I've been there. And then they're chanting at Tatis that he cheats or whatever the heck. And then Stanton's first ever home game, he strikes out 3 times and then they boo him. I'm like, it's his first game. Yankees fans are terrible.
We can agree on that. Yes,
we can agree on that. The Mets fans are a lot better. They're just sad, which is the difference. But with this series, Blake Snell, the fact that Gary, I forgot that he made that comment about him, but he's been catching for him and he's been great. So clearly it hasn't been an issue so far. But just to kind of tie a bow on it, Gary Sanchez being in this lineup is just a little bit of a reminder that the bench depth of the Padres is not there. Trent Grisham can't hit. That's been the same thing for a while. Jake Cronenworth, former Ray, very good. His first 2 years, top 5 in F4 among second basemen. Ever since then, it's just been a downwards trend. And for some reason, they gave him a 7-year extension. That's not for this podcast. That's for another show. But he hasn't been hitting as well. Matt Carpenter hasn't been hitting as well. The really only bat that's kind of lived up to being average is Ha-Seong Kim for the Padres. And they need one of these guys, whether it be Carpenter, Gary, Grisham, Cronenworth, Cruz, former Ray as well. One of those guys needs to be average, because currently constituted, they are not. If you want to go by WRC plus metrics, they're all below 100, which isn't great, especially with, I think, Cronenworth, who just gets that extension. The fact that he hasn't been hitting a lot better. Cruz is old, and it looks like I've been making this joke on the pod a lot of times this year, where I swear before at bats he decides what he's going to do. He's just like, I'm taking my 3 hacks and sitting down. I don't care what the pitches are.
If you're 44 years old, and I mean, why not, man? You already have like 480 home runs, career home runs. Like, just do that.
He does hit the home run on Friday night, which is pretty cool. Yeah. That's all he's been doing. 30.3% strikeout rate on the season for Nelson Cruz and a 4% walk rate, but he's slugging 420. That's all he does.
That's all he does.
He hits a solo home run every now and then. He doesn't even have that many.
He takes daddy hacks now. Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely. It's so funny, man. You got if you watch Padres game, he walks up, he's like, and I'm like, oh, you're just swinging for every pitch. I can tell. Yeah. But the vibes have been cool with him at the very minimum. But yeah, it's going to take one of those guys being average, the rest of the top of the lineup doing what they always do. Because, I mean, defense, pitching, as was seen this weekend with Joe Musgrove, and especially with Blake Snell and their bullpen. We didn't talk a lot about Josh Hader or the rest of the bullpen in general, that you guys almost got to Martinez there, but they're up there too in leaders in ERA amongst relief pitchers. So
yeah,
that's the formula for success.
I read the Padres, the starting pitching has not been the problem at all. Like you said, it's the offense, because the starting pitching, I think the Padres are third in most quality starts this year. So it's really more of an offensive problem that the Padres have. The Rays usually have that problem. In 2023, they're not having that problem, which is, thank everything in the universe. But the Rays do have kind of the bullpen is the flaw. So they're trying new names every couple weeks and see who sticks and who doesn't. Robert Stephenson, they got from the Pirates. Apparently he can be a high leverage arm. You got Jason Adam, you got Pete Fairbanks, but you got Sean Armstrong, who got into a little bit of trouble there. But you really need, that's the flaw right now for the Rays, is kind of like, how can we get this to be a little bit more solid? And then you got yourself a really potent team that you could probably see go deep in the playoffs, hopefully. And maybe this is the matchup that we see in October for the World Series, is both of our teams. Hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it says a lot that their bullpen is 15th in ERA, which isn't that bad. And their starting pitching is just phenomenal. So it evens it all out. Like, hey, every team has a weakness. And for the record, guys, Padres third amongst relief pitchers in ERA. So that just shows you great defense, great relief pitching, great starting pitching. They just need the top of the lineup to go ahead and play well. So we're going to see how that goes. Hopefully they can keep up this momentum against the San Francisco Giants. That's who they have for a 4-game set. That's going to be fun and not easy. Stop sleeping on the Giants, guys. That team every year, they're a little bit of Rays of the National League, going for them a little bit. They have a little bit of those vibes, not quite as we will take someone you have never heard of and make them good as Tampa does, but still a little bit. So I'm looking forward to that series as well. But Ulises, this has been a blast. Do you have any final words or other things you would like to plug for the good folks out there?
Of course. Well, you guys, if you want some more Tampa Bay Rays content, you can look us up on any podcast platform, Locked On Rays, but also YouTube. That's where we are getting the people on. Subscribe to the channel, like the videos, Locked On Rays, and we are here for you Monday through Friday. And if you're on YouTube, you can see the Twitter handle right there, at Sambrano Ulises. You can follow me there, or at Locked On Rays. You can follow us there as well.
Be sure to do that, especially the YouTube. Ulises has an immaculate setup with all the gear, with all the signs and the bobbleheads. Really great stuff. Kind of beats out my little Library of Congress behind me, to be honest with you, in a lot of ways. But this has been a blast, man. Hopefully, if the Padres and Rays end up playing, it's in the World Series. I think that'd be a lot of fun, to be quite honest with you. Two really cool teams. But until next time, everybody, that about does it for not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Rays podcast as well. And until next time, stay safe and of course stay faithful, my Fire Faithful homies and Tampa Devil Ray homies. I don't know what your like moniker is aside from Rays. We have Fire Faithful, like
we do Raise Up. That's our
Raise
thing.
Up. All right, and the Raise Up folk. Hope you guys do well. Until next time, we'll see you.